Hi, everybody. Welcome to another edition of WagerTalk, the podcast. Marco D'Angelo's here. I'm Dave Cokin. Scott Spreitzer got hung up with a family thing tonight. He's doing his chauffeur routine, and so he can't make it in person. But you'll hear from Scott during the show because, in fact, you'll hear from him very quickly because we're going to start things off by going right behind the counter. And we talked with Will Bernanke today on the Las Vegas Sports Line, Scott Spreitzer and myself, Dave Cokin, to get a rundown of what's happening with the football games on the other side of the counter. And Will Bernanke with us right now to look at what's happening on the other side of the counter. Hi, Will. How are you?
Real good. Hope you guys had a great New Year. Safe New Year.
Thank you, sir. We hope the same for you. We got a lot of stuff to talk about, so let's start running them through.
Yeah.
And we'll begin. Let's begin on the 4 playoff games and what's happening there. It looks like a lot of favorite money showing up. We'll take them in order and begin with the Titans and the Chiefs.
Yeah, you said exactly what you said. All favorite money so far. On the Kansas City game, the Chiefs have gone 7.5 to 8.5, and I think this line even gets to 9. I don't know if it gets to 10, but definitely 9. And the money's showing it 3.5 times more Kansas City money on account, and over the counter, actually 5 times more money on Kansas City right now.
Late game, Will, the Falcons at the Rams, 6.5 at last check at CGT, total 48.5. Are you still seeing 6.5, or is there any chance that this game gets to 7?
I don't think it gets to 7. I think the public's going to keep it down here. This 90% of account money is on the Rams, but over the counter, which is typically public money, 60% of it's on the Falcons, and I think that's holding this line down.
That's a fascinating game to me in that it's pros versus Joes.
Yes.
But not the way I would have thought.
Right.
I'm actually rather surprised by the breakdown that you just shared with us, and that's why we have you guys on, because that's really, really good information for people that are listening right now to find out. Maybe it's not pros versus Joes the way you thought it would be. This one, I think, will be. Well, there's not going to be any pros versus Joes. Let's put it that way.
No.
I think it's going to be pros and Joes on the same side. Number going up as the Bills. Certainly a great accomplishment last weekend for them to win their way in with a little help from the Bengals. They take out a Jaguars team that's lost 2 in a row to end the season, but it isn't deterring anybody from betting them.
No, and the Bills getting the playoffs, it just seemed like destiny, and they hadn't been there, and it's just been so many years that and bettors are not backing them. They're backing Jacksonville here. Line's gone from 7 to 8.5. Again, this is one that's similar to the Chiefs game. A lot of dynamics are similar, except the total being lower. And all the money is on Jacksonville. It's 80% on account and 70% over the counter back in the Jaguars.
I did see today that LaShawn McCoy did not practice, but
right.
It's supposed to have no bearing on him playing or not this weekend.
The X-rays came back negative. And I don't think there's any way he's not going to be out there.
Right.
I also don't think there's any way he's going to be at full strength.
Well, that's the thing. It's going to be interesting to see how much of an effect he has on this game from a positive sense for the Buffalo Bills. Panthers and Saints are going to wrap up the Wildcard weekend on Sunday. Will, the Saints 6.5, 48 at last check. Saw a lot of 7s out there yesterday and today. Are you guys getting anywhere close to that 7?
Right now we're at 6.5 solid, so no. The 7s that are out there will have juice. But right now, 4 times more money on account coming on the Saints, and it's still 90% over the count on the Saints. But you figure that will shift as we get closer to kickoff here, because this could be the biggest handle game of the week. I think it will be.
And no, I don't, because I think Monday's game will be the biggest handle game of the week.
You got me there. Yeah.
Bama and Georgia, what a great matchup! This is an absolutely phenomenal betting game. Let's talk about where the betting line is, what's been happening, and also talk about the fact that this is going to be kind of a Super Bowl-style game as far as CG props are concerned.
Yeah, right now, over 50 props we will have for this game. It's going to be a prop sheet of everything you can possibly imagine. And as far as what we're seeing from line movement here, it has ticked down. We've seen, Alabama go from -4 to 3.5, and total's gone from 47 to 44.5. So this total could maybe get down to 44. You don't really see 2.5, 3-point moves on big games like this, so that's significant.
Well, do you anticipate that on game day you'll start seeing more Alabama money?
Yes, just similar to the Clemson, the Alabama-Clemson game.
I was kind of surprised. I was asked by a couple of people who sent me a text as the Alabama game was wrapping up, couple of minutes to go in the game, and obviously they had the game against Clemson won. They asked me for my power rating, and I made it, and then the line came out 3.5. Got to tell you, Will, I mean, you guys make the numbers behind the counter. You do a fantastic job doing it. I was surprised that it was 3.5. Then it jumps to 4.5 in most places that open at that low, but it's come back down, as you mentioned again. I mean, I get up this morning, first thing I do is check CGT, and I see 3.5. I got to admit, it did surprise me a little bit.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this game is, 4 times more money is coming in Alabama over the counter, where on account, which is typically, the sharper bettors, it's even right now. So I don't think they even know what to make of it at this point. But they certainly are 3 times more money's on the under on account right now. So that they know what to make of that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the side, the as far as the pro money, I think it's going to all be under. Whether it stays under or not, we'll have to wait and see. All right, great stuff from Will Bernanke. Always nice to find out exactly where the breakdowns are occurring at the various sports books around town. And, of course, CG Technology with several big books. Marco, they do a lot of business, so it gives you a good representation of where the sharp money is, or if you want to call it the pro money, as opposed to the square money. It doesn't mean one side or the other is right or wrong, but it's still good to have that information.
Oh, definitely. This NFL season, Dave, we've seen that the non-sharp guys, the public, so to speak, has had, a really good run with a lot of the favorites. We saw that early in the season. Remember that 3 or 4 week stretch where the favorites just totally dominated everything and they were getting all the money. But this week, the books, they got to be a little bit worried, Dave. This round of the playoffs, if you win, just pick the winner. You got the cover most of the time as well. That's history has shown that, especially the last couple of years. And with so many teams over that 7-point mark this year in the playoffs, the teaser liability for the books is going to be big. And I know, a couple of years ago, they had the big run where that one wild card weekend, it didn't matter if you took the favorite or the dog. Everything came home with the teasers. And the books got annihilated. And one book on the strip, Caesars Properties, actually took the teasers off for the next round of the playoffs, which that's what happens when you have bean counters doing something instead of actual bookmakers doing something. Because if you remember that year, the favorites the numbers were around 3.5 on all the games, which is when you want people betting teasers. And that's
or at least just taking the favorites and the teasers.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a situation where it was a dumb move. There's no way to put about it, but that's what happens whenever you don't have guys, actual bookmakers doing the stuff.
We'll take a quick break, then Marco and myself will come back and we'll take a look at the matchups this weekend and try and break them down a little bit for you, see if we can get you an opinion or two that might be worth following. That's next on today's podcast.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
All right, 4 playoff games this weekend. It is the wild card round. And as you mentioned earlier, talking about a situation this year, Marco, where there are big lines on each of the games. Let's kind of take them in order and talk about them a little bit. We'll talk about first the Titans taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. This looks like a game where the betting action is going to be on the Kansas City Chiefs. We know that. The odds makers have certainly put that into the number. The Titans have not been a good football team. They did manage to win their final game to qualify for the playoffs, but I don't think anybody's going to make an argument the Titans have been particularly impressive down the stretch. But they're starting off 0-0 here, just like Kansas City, so the mindset should be okay.
Yeah, and this, in my opinion, is going to be the game that's going to get the most action at the books as far as the favorite goes, especially on the teaser end, bringing Kansas City down to just win the game, because that perception of Tennessee right now is they backed their way into the playoffs. They had lost 3 in a row. They won their final game of the season in ugly fashion, 15-10 over Jacksonville. And Jacksonville really didn't have anything to play for in that game, even though they came out and said that they were trying to win the game and they played their starters. It was a meaningless game because it didn't matter if they won or lost. They were going to be the number 3 seed.
I think the coaching staff was trying to win the game, or said they were trying to win the game more than the players. The players, look, I watched the game. I watched all the games last weekend. They weren't mentally into that football game. And I don't blame him. That's why you're better off just sitting the guys in the last week. I don't think it makes a huge difference as far as this week goes. I'm not buying into this. Their confidence is going to be shot. I think that's a lot of crap. It was a nothing game, and they played like it. And Tennessee still barely won the game.
Yeah, exactly. But the one thing where everybody's talking about Tennessee and how bad they've looked down the stretch, the fact is they're 5-1 against the spread the last 6. And for us, on what we do, we don't care win or lose. We care about the point spread. So they've exceeded expectations point spread wise the last 6 weeks, going 5-1, getting the money. So I'm a little concerned that this might be one of those ones where Vegas has got a little bit too aggressive in moving this line beyond the 7.5 and get it to 9. We know Andy Reid's history in the playoffs. He always goes conservative. They finally opened things up again at the end of the season. They got back to the running game, which opened up the passing game.
Which is huge for them.
Absolutely, and that's what they were doing at the beginning of the season. But look at the 4 teams they played at the end of the season, Dave. You wins over Oakland, Miami, and Denver. That does not impress me in the least. Those were teams that were in total chaos at the end of the season. Oakland fires their coach. Miami was a train wreck all season. And Denver, that was a total collapse by them. They played 3 different quarterbacks. They couldn't find anybody to move the football. And Kansas City enjoyed a 12-3 turnover edge in that 4-game stretch. You do that, you're going to win football games. I'm sorry, I don't care who you're playing. You got a +9 over a 4-game period on turnovers, you're going to win.
You could even beat the Browns playing like that. The thing that really interests me here is I've been waiting for Mariota to step it up. I still think the guy's got a lot of ability. It hasn't come together for him. I think you can argue he has not improved since his rookie season to any great extent. Very efficient in the red zone, but too many mistakes getting down the field, and there just seems to be a problem throwing that out pass, which he just I don't know whether it's mental, physical. I can't explain it. I'm not a quarterback coach, so what the hell do I know? But I know he's not making that pass. They need to get that pass, that aspect of the passing game, clicking to some extent here, because you've got to vary your offense against this Kansas City defense. If you get one-dimensional against the Chiefs, you're not beating them.
No, I agree with that 100%. In part of the season, Mariota, he had the leg injury that slowed him down. Mariota's better when he's on the move.
Yeah.
There's pocket passers and then there's quarterbacks on the move. The offense that he came from at Oregon, he was always in motion, and that's where he's better at. Kansas City, if Andy Reid comes in here and plays the conservative nature, gets a lead and goes conservative, this is a big number where the back door is always going to be open, I think, in this game. I'm not, real strong in this game, but I don't trust Kansas City laying the points here. I think I'm attracted to the dog in this one.
The Falcons taking on the Rams in L.A., and we talked about this one with Will Bernanke in the segment you just heard, Behind the Counter. And to be honest, I'm surprised. I thought this was going to be a game where the public would bet on the more exciting team, the Rams, and against a team that was burned their money all year long in the Atlanta Falcons. Instead, if you want to look at it from a sharps versus squares perspective, the sharper money is showing on the Rams, and the public money is actually showing on the Falcons. Now, I don't really care about that. I just throw it out there for information's sake. I'm looking at this game, and if I play it, and I have not played this game yet, but if I play it, I'll be on the square side, the Atlanta Falcons plus the points. And I'll give you a couple of reasons why. One, the Rams get a home field advantage in the line that isn't really there. Sorry, LA fans, no offense, but you guys aren't much. You're the worst fan base in the league. You don't show up. Okay? The Chargers, fine. They're in a soccer stadium and they're from San Diego, and who cares? But this is the Rams are supposed to be the real LA football team. You go back a few weeks, and the real big game of the season.
Philadelphia, yep.
There's more Eagle fans there than Rams. It wasn't close. It was at least 2-1. Yeah. And I got that, and I could see that and hear it watching the game on TV, and I got that from people who are actually at the game. By the way, they were Eagles fans. And they said, oh, yeah, it was like a home game for us. And that's part of the reason I think that the Rams have been a better road team than a home team this year. It's, maybe they'll show up for this game. I don't know. But I got to tell you something. I think you're going to have a lot of Atlanta fans in the stands. The Falcons have way more playoff experience, which I think is a plus. certainly you can make a case the Rams are the better football team. I'm not going to argue that. The Rams are the better football team. They're very explosive on offense. Goff has improved dramatically this season. Gurley is an MVP candidate. Donald is as good a defensive football player as you'll find in the entire National Football League. You know he's going to get to Matt Ryan at some point in this game, and if he can create havoc in the Rams' backfield and maybe get a sack or two, or cause a turnover or two, he's going to he'll get a sack or two.
Yeah.
Okay, if he can cause turnover, all the better. But yet, I still think the Falcons are going to give them a great battle here, and I think the line's a little too high. I mean, to me, this is strictly a field goal game. Anything more than that, to me, is a little bit of a bargain. And I know they've been a flop this season, Super Bowl hangover, whatever. They haven't been able to finish games, but they did finish a game they had to finish last week. That's big for this football team. I think the Falcons, and again, I haven't bet it, so it's not my game of the week. Yeah. I've got a 5% play this week. It's not this one, but I'm looking at the underdog.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I have several points that I'll touch upon. Jared Goff's had a great year. There's no question about it. You can't fault anything he's done. But the fact still remains, this is his first playoff game. Until you face that pressure of playing in a playoff game, you got to prove it to me. Now, I did a podcast this morning that with Dr. Bob was on it. Big numbers guy, goes back. Yep. And he brought up a fact going back, I think, to 1978. It was a horrendous record for starting quarterbacks making their first playoff game. And I wrote it down, and I don't want to misquote it, but it was really bad.
Really?
So that's one factor. Another factor is, and I thought you were going to talk, because we did talk about this a week before, the kicker for the Rams.
Oh, I forgot to mention that.
That's another huge factor, because it's changed the way the Rams have addressed how they've attacked. They've punted where they would have kicked field goals before, where they would have did the long field goal, and then they've gone for some where they're in that fringe spot. So it changes your game plan. Now, that can work both ways, but usually when you're changing your game plan because of your field goal kicker, it's not a good change.
Zerline's automatic from like 55 in.
He's to me, him and Tucker from Baltimore, two best kickers in the league, in my opinion. So that's a big area to look at. And then the one weak link on the Rams team has been the run defense. They're ranked 30th in the league. They allow 4.7 yards per carry. In Atlanta, although the last 2 weeks the running game has been non-existent for Atlanta, they still are the 9th ranked team rushing the football at 4.3 yards per carry. They got to get the running game going. If the running game is going, it is going to help Matt Ryan in this game. The problem with the Falcons, and this is what was last week's game, I was on the Falcons for a big play, and I felt fortunate to come away with the win, because even though they dominated that game, they couldn't put Carolina away because they kept settling for field goals. They moved the football between the 20s, but when they got into the red zone, it just stalled. And it stalled because I think of the play calling upstairs with Sarkisian. I'm not a fan of the way he's called games this year, and I just hope it doesn't come back to bite them.
On Sunday, the Jaguars will get to host a playoff game, and the Buffalo Bills are the surprise opponent. The Bills getting the win last week to give themselves a chance to make the playoffs, and then they got in when the Ravens got upset at the end of the game by Andy Dalton and the Cincinnati Bengals. We're not going to comment on the Marvin Lewis situation, who's now back at quarterback or coach for the Bengals, which is astonishing, but we'll talk about that another time. Let's talk about this matchup. Shady McCoy hurt his ankle. He has a sprained ankle. Now, the good news for the Bills is the x-rays did come back negative. They did the MRI. It's not broken. But he definitely has a sprain. As of now, no official announcement as to whether he'll play on Sunday. I'd be surprised if he's not out there. But, Marco, I'd also be surprised if he's close to 100%. And we know how vital a piece of the offense for Buffalo McCoy is.
He's the whole offense. He's what makes things go, because when that running game is going, that helps Tyrod Taylor. Because let's face it, Taylor's not an elite quarterback. He needs all the help he can get. And if he has to put the team on his shoulders to throw the football to win the game, this is not the team you want to be throwing the football against. Whenever you become one-dimensional against Jacksonville, they're going to pin their ears and come after you, and they've got one of the better secondaries in football. this is a bad situation. When I saw the injury on Sunday last week and I saw him on the field and banging the field, that was not the look of a guy that was going to be back on the field in a week. And if he is, there's just no way that I feel that he could be anywhere near 100%. And the thing about an ankle injury is you could tape it enough and, give him some painkillers and get him to go. The question is, can he make the cuts? That's the important part. He can run probably straight ahead, but can he make the cuts? And just running straight ahead, that's not the effectiveness. He needs that ability to hit the holes and make the cuts that he needs to make. That concerns me. Jacksonville, to me, I throw out the last two games. The game they went to San Francisco, they had two things going against them when they went to San Francisco 2 weeks ago. One was they just came off two monster games in a row at home. They beat the Seattle Seahawks that, to me, was their legitimizer. That was the game that made people say, Jacksonville's for real. We got to start taking them seriously. They had that string of wins, but they were beating nobodies. They beat the Seahawks. Even though Seattle was down this year, it's still the Seahawks, a team that's a playoff team almost every year, and they got Russell Wilson. They won that game. Then the next week you would have expected maybe a letdown after the Seattle game. No, they blow out Houston, and we know Houston's decimated with injuries, but still, they beat them 45-7 and locked up the division. It was a natural letdown going to San Francisco, and there's not a team at the end of the season that was playing with more excitement than the 49ers were. So that was a perfect
storm.
Some
money.
Yeah, it was a perfect storm for San Francisco to win that game against them. And then, as we said last week, it was a meaningless game for them. Once the Steelers won that Monday night game after they lost the San Francisco game, they had nothing to play for. They were locked into the 3 seed. This is a team that prior to that rolled off a 7-1 record before those two losses, 6-2 against the spread. You're going against the Buffalo team that right now might be playing with one hand tied behind her back if McCoy can't go. And did you see Buffalo, how excited they were just to get into the playoffs?
I don't blame them either. Good for them.
But, they look like they won the Super Bowl. You got to be, this is, you got to come right back and play. And third week in a row on the road is another factor for Buffalo that's not, to their advantage playing in this one. So this one, I'll lay the points with Jacksonville. I think it'll be used on a lot of teasers, but I don't think it'll be used as heavily as Kansas City because people still, it's the name Jacksonville. They just don't believe in Jacksonville and Blake Bortles. If Bortles does the turnovers, they had 7 turnovers in the last 2 weeks. They weren't all his, but still, he is capable of having that 3-interception game, and then, of course, that would kill it. But I just don't see it happen. I see them jumping out to a big lead and not looking back.
And that brings us to what I think is the main event on the Wildcard weekend slate. It's a good one. Carolina and New Orleans, no love lost to these divisional rivals. Both teams, to me, are teams that could make a run and perhaps get to the Super Bowl. The Panthers have to get consistency out of Cam Newton. It wasn't there last week. He had a really bad game against Atlanta. He was high with several passes, just way off. But, it just wasn't a very big game for Carolina. I know going in, the thought was, well, Carolina can improve their playoff positioning. And I've said this 100 times, and I'll make it 101. The media and the fans care way more about playoff seeding than the players do and that the coaches do. Coaches might talk about it like it matters, but it really doesn't, and the players couldn't care less. They were already in the playoffs, and it showed. Carolina was flat, and so was Newton last week. They won't be flat for this game. The Saints managed to play an exciting game in Tampa Bay, but they weren't at their best in the football game either. Both teams had bigger fish to fry, and now we get that main course. This is a really good matchup and a game I can't wait to see.
Yeah, and the Saints had everything to play. I mean, both teams could have won their division last week. They ended up both losing.
But they were both in the playoffs
But they were both in the playoffs anyway. But if you want to take it to the next level, do you think the Saints were trying to make sure that they ended up facing Philadelphia? Because right now, everybody, that's the weak link.
Look, that was the big reason that it wasn't just the fact. I mean, look, I'll go back to the Rams-49ers game for a minute. 49ers were a big game for me, and if I had a game of the year, I don't do a game of the year. If I had one, that would have been it. For the very simple reason that the Rams were trying to lose the football game. I don't think it was as obvious with the Saints But they didn't have their best game plan out there last week because everybody wants to face Philadelphia right now.
Yeah. Do you blame them?
No.
You got your choice. If you want to play Philly or you want to play Minnesota, who do you want to play right now? I know where I would want to be. So you look at this one. You've got one other factor. You've got it's so hard to beat a team 3 times in one season, which is an urban myth. Because going back since 1970, there's been 20 times where a team was going for the 3-0 sweep, and the team that won the first 2 won the third game 13 of 20 times.
It's not so different from the college basketball stuff we hear when the conference tournament. Well, this team already won twice against the other. Look, here's why it's kind of a myth. It sounds good in theory. They want to, it's tough to beat the same team 3 times, and the other team's going to have revenge on their minds. Who would you rather have? The team that's lost the first 2 games and doesn't know if they can beat this particular opponent, hopes they do, or the team that knows they can beat the opponent? Give me the confident squad.
I agree with you on that statement, but I'm going to disagree with you as far as in this game. And what I'm looking at is how the 2 teams were playing when they faced each other for those first 2 meetings. Right. In the first meeting was early in the season, and if you look at the numbers of Cam Newton, his first half splits, TDs to interceptions versus the second half of the season, totally different. At the beginning of the season, I feel Cam Newton still was not 100% from the shoulder surgery he had off season. He wasn't himself. That's when they played the first time, and the Saints blew the Panthers off the field. He had an ugly game. In the second game, they dominated the game, but the game was broken open by 2 special teams plays that gave them a big lead. I think Carolina has a chance in this game. The Saints have done things this year. Let's face it, their defense played much better than anybody anticipated it would. But the reason it played better, Dave, is because of the running game. They changed their identity. The Saints weren't a team that were going up and down the field, scoring in 2 minutes, and then putting their defense right back out on the field. They were playing time of possession, ball control. They drove the football down the field with that 2-headed monster of running backs that they have with Kamara and Ingram, and it gave them – they won the time of possession battle. And I don't care who you are, if your defense is on the field – for less plays, their numbers are going to be better. It's just the way it is. And that's what we saw with the Saints. But I did see something in the last 2 weeks that concerned me with the Saints. Matty Ryan 2 weeks ago threw for 264 against them. And then last week, Jameis Winston threw for 345. That scares me a little bit. Now, on the flip side to that, Cam Newton has not put up big numbers in a game this year. But the one element with Cam Newton is, and it was a perfect example last week, as much as I dominated the game with Atlanta, I was never easy because Atlanta didn't put them away. And Cam Newton has that ability that he can beat you with his feet if it's not working with his arm. That's my only concern. This number's inflated, but I will say, of all the dogs, this looks like the most attractive dog to take of the week, Carolina.
We'll take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll look at the big event this week, and it's the Monday battle for all the marbles in college football. UGA and Alabama next.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Okay, well, here we go, Marco. All the marbles on Monday night. Georgia and Alabama. Georgia winning one of the great college football classic thrillers of all time with a phenomenal comeback against Oklahoma. Actually, they came back twice in that football game. The big comeback from a 31-14 deficit. Alabama had it a lot easier as they completely dismantled Clemson in what actually was a slaughter. Had Alabama's offense been a little more efficient, they'd have won the game by 30, maybe 35 points. It was that lopsided. Alabama's the favorite in this one. These teams are familiar with one another, even though they didn't play this year. They're SEC rivals. I mean, there's just so much good stuff on the line here. It's a tremendous matchup.
Oh, it is. And, Dave, ironically, we had the 1 through 4 seeds set up by the committee.
Yep.
the 3 and 4 seeds win.
And they were both favored.
And I've said 100 times, and especially we'll talk about this in a few months when we're doing March Madness, when the committee does the seeding and Vegas does the numbers,
they don't have a committee. Okay, let's call it straight. The people they have doing this stuff may know the business of college football. I'm sure they're great fans. There's some coaches involved. But in terms of weighing strengths and weaknesses, they haven't got the slightest blinking idea of what they're doing. They suck at it. Okay, they're terrible at it. You couldn't find a worse group of people to be picking this stuff. And consequently, they seed it wrong. They seed it wrong every year, basically. And
I'm
here.
I'm going to line up with the guys that do this for a living and put the numbers up for people to bet. They're going to know it better, and they got both of them right. You know, the market corrected itself immediately on the Oklahoma game, and let's give it credit. Watching the two games, obviously to the naked eye, the fans are going to say, okay, Alabama was the more impressive game for sure. They were
the best team out there this weekend. Yeah.
But it was a combination of their dominance defensively and Clemson's ineptness on offense. We saw for the first time this year the Clemson Tigers actually missed Deshaun Watson. You know, they were able to hide.
Kelly Bryant's a nice player, but
he's not. The last 2 years, and that's why I was on Alabama big, and that was the whole key to my write-up. There's no Deshaun Watson here. He is the player that single-handedly carried this team against Alabama the 2 years that they played. Now, for Georgia, a lot of people, and I hear everybody saying this, and I want to get your take, well, that the overtime game took too much out of Georgia, having to come from behind the way they did and then survive 2 overtime. To me, you know what? I think it just builds more confidence for this team because you had a freshman quarterback that gained confidence. As the further that game went, the more confidence Fromm had.
I'm going to make this real simple, okay? And I know it's not football, but in some ways it's even more physically taxing. When I was 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, I would, if things were going right, be active all night long with a lot of beverages and other things involved. And I'd be fine the next day. Now, if I tried that at my age now, you would be here by yourself because I would be dead, okay? It's that simple. But at that age, and I wasn't a finely tuned athlete, by the way, okay? These guys are finely tuned athletes. You really think that's going to take... Now, it might drain them a bit mentally. That's the coach's job to put that... Get everything back on the same page. Physically, come on. I mean, that's the biggest load of crap I've ever heard is that, boy, they're going to be tired. No, they're not, okay? You either forgot what it was like to be 18 or 19 years old or you led a sheltered life. What can I tell you? Okay? They're going to be fine physically. Now, mentally is another story. That's a bit of a challenge. As much as this is a huge game, it's for the national championship. It was a phenomenal comeback. It was incredibly exciting. It did go to double overtime, and mentally, there can be a hangover. But this is a good coaching staff, and a good coaching staff will find a way to put that in the back burner and say, hey, guys, we celebrated. We had fun. We got to get down to business now. And I'll say this. The Georgia Bulldogs actually celebrated less than the Buffalo Bills did.
They did.
They did. I'm serious.
I don't think anybody could have celebrated more than the Buffalo Bills did last Sunday.
Now, the matchup itself, this Alabama defense, when healthy, is absolutely suffocating. Here's the problem, and I'm not climbing on the Georgia bandwagon yet. I'm thinking about it. They got hurt at linebacker again. Mm-hmm. This was the problem for them at the end of the season was the linebacker injuries. It was impacting what they do defensively. And the other side of that coin is that their offense wasn't efficient at all last week. They should have put more points on the board. Hurts was not really very good in that game. You got to get a better performance out of him in this game. If they perform at the same level they did offensively against Clemson, I think they're going to lose the football game because Georgia is going to get some points in this football game. If the linebacker situation, and I want to get more information on this. We've still got a few days to go before the game. One guy we know is definitely out. Another guy might be out. If that linebacker situation is close to what it was toward the end of the regular season, Georgia's going to have the ability to get that running game going, and if they can do that, they might just become the better football team here.
Georgia can run the football well, and what you're talking about during the season, LSU ran for 151 yards against Alabama. Mississippi State ran for 172.
That was all when they were having the injury issues.
And Auburn ran for 168. So I agree with you 100%. One of the things that we do have to mention is Nick Saban's going against a former assistant. And
I saw that stat.
The stat is out there. He's 11-0 straight up against former assistants, 9-2 against the spread. But this is for a national championship. And Kirby Smart is going to know where to attack that defense from. It's only a couple years removed from him being there. It's not like they changed their whole game plan. Alabama does what they do.
He might well have recruited some of these guys.
So he's going to go, I like the fact that he's in his first game and he has something to prove for the national championship. The other thing that everybody's making a comparison to is, well, Jalen Hurts has already played in a national championship where Fromm is a true freshman and, the big stage is going to get to him. No, he got okay with the big stage, playing a double overtime game against a team that was putting points on. And what impressed me about Georgia and Fromm in that game is because Oklahoma jumped out to the lead the way they did, 21-7 right away, they had to change their identity. They still got their rushing yards, but they had to throw the football a lot more than he's accustomed to doing. Now, granted, throwing the football against the Oklahoma defense is a hell of a lot easier than going against Alabama's, but it gave the kid confidence. Now he knows he can do it if he needs to do it. And add that to the running back situation that they have, one of the best. I mean, they don't have one. They don't have two. They can go three deep on running backs. Yep. For Georgia. I think they can just keep pounding the rock at Alabama. And Jalen Hurts, yeah, he has experience. But, boy, if we see the Jalen Hurts we saw last week against Clemson, they're in trouble. They're in deep trouble because this Georgia team will move the football better than Clemson did last week.
I want to touch on a little college basketball as well. We're getting into the conference time of year. It's so much excitement in college basketball. There's a couple of games we'll talk about for this weekend. North Carolina, Virginia, it's the ultimate difference in tempos here in terms of what one team wants to do as opposed to what the other team wants to do. North Carolina wants to push things. Virginia is number 351 out of 351 in adjusted tempo at kenpom.com. It tells you all you need to know about what Tony Bennett wants to accomplish in this game. That pack line defense at times has given North Carolina fits in the past. It also at times has not been effective against them. A couple of years ago, you look back, North Carolina took a game into the 150 range and won. And if they can do that, if they can get this game high scoring, they'll beat them again. But Virginia is playing really good basketball right now. And it's almost under the radar in a sense because I don't think people are looking at Virginia and saying, well, they're kind of used to this. Virginia looks great in January, and then they're maybe not so great. And I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying the same thing is going to happen here. They'll look like a Final Four team now, and then they won't later in the season. But the fact is, right now, they do look like one of the four best teams in the country. Playing at home is a big advantage for them. They're more likely to be able to input their style of play, their tempo, and get that pack line defense rolling and frustrate North Carolina into mistakes. I think I have to lead at Virginia in the game.
Yeah, we're taping on Thursday night, so we got to see exactly where the line comes out on this one. But I agree with you. I love this Virginia team. They played last night, and I was on them big against their in-state rival Virginia Tech. There's bigger fish to fry in the ACC, obviously, but they just totally manhandled them last night. And this is the team, the key point that you brought up is they frustrate teams because of their pace. And they have a very good defense. They have the best, one of the best defenses in college basketball. They slow the pace. They make you work for every shot, and teams just don't shoot well against them. I think teams are shooting around 39% against this team.
Can't get good looks.
Exactly. And offensively, what I like this year about the team, they're a little bit better offensively than they've been in the past. They had to work for their shots before, and they didn't have a lot of playmakers. This year, they've got 7 players on the roster that get active minutes that are scoring between 6 and 16 points. They're not relying on getting the points from 2 or 3 players and then trying to, because they played a lot of games in the 50s. last year. They'd slow you down. You'd be 60 to 58, type games. But now they've got some scoring, and they got that balanced scoring, and that's going to make them tougher because if they extend leads, they take care of the basketball. They don't turn it over, shoot foul shots. That's what you need to win. And if you take the other team out of their game plan and frustrate them, what ends up happening so many times with teams that like to go with the up-tempo, Dave, is they get frustrated to the point that they come down and then they force bad shots because they're trying to force the issue too much to overcompensate from the other style.
All right, well, we'll see how that one plays out. And then there's this is just an exciting matchup. Oklahoma and West Virginia being played in Mountaineer country. This is going to be a very fast-paced basketball game. Oklahoma likes to get up and down the court. They probably got the best single individual player in college basketball this year. West Virginia, they're going to look ugly at times with the bricks they throw up, but the transition on this team is amazing. They turn everybody over. They are up and down the court, playing at a frenetic pace. It's Huggins ball all the way. This is a really good matchup between these two teams. This is probably a game I'm going to just sit back and not even try to pick a side in because I don't really know what's going to happen. I don't want to go against Oklahoma. I think LK's got himself a real team this year. The rebuild, last year was the Valley after the Final Four team from the prior season. They're really good again this season. And I think this is actually Huggins' best team at West Virginia. They'll still have games where they can turn into bricklayers and shoot some ugly shots. But I think there's more. Let's put it this way. The offensive efficiency numbers on this team are actually quite good. They're actually even better than their defensive efficiency numbers. If anything, I would look for a very high-scoring game here. I don't know what they'll do with the total, but they might not be able to keep this one from getting to, 160, 170 points. It's going to be a shootout.
Oh, there's no question the tempo is going to be up. Both teams, as you said, are going to want to push the basketball up the court. And you talk about the efficiency of West Virginia. It's right there with the guard play. They have two guards on this team, Carter and Miles. The two are combining for 30 points. You get that kind of play out of your guards for a team and then turn the basketball over the way they create turnovers with that pressure defense, that's going to give you a lot more possessions. But those two guards that they have at West Virginia, they need both of them to equal what they've got from Trae Young for Oklahoma. I'm excited to see what he does against this pressure defense. He has been absolutely amazing this season, 29.4 points per game. He's shooting 47% from the field. In three-point range, he's shooting 40%. How do you stop this guy? They've got four players in starting lineup that reach double digits. Obviously, they're a high-scoring team, so they're going to have a lot more scorers. But if West Virginia can slow him down, then West Virginia has a chance. I want to see if they can do it. Me personally, you got to see where the line's going to come out on this one. What number you put on this one, Dave? I'm looking like 4 or 5 points for West Virginia.
I think I might make it a shade lower than that.
Based on Oklahoma coming off another good one. I was basing it too. Right now, do you make TCU or West Virginia better?
I don't have my numbers in front of me. I think, you know what? I don't even want to guess because I don't have it in front of me.
Because they were getting
the top of my head,
getting 2 at TCU. Yep. So I'm trying to compare there. TCU's I think by season's end, TCU might be the better team.
West Virginia's probably a little higher ranked right
now because of name and everything.
So
and
I would thought 3.5, somewhere in that range.
So depending where it's at, if it's 3.5, I might be tempted to jump in on West Virginia. If it's closer to the 5, then I might be looking to the Oklahoma side.
Doesn't sound like it's a best bet material.
No, it does not, sir.
But speaking of best bets, we're going to take a quick break, and we will come back with our best bets for today's podcast next. We spent our little break here talking about the exciting stuff that's happening in Las Vegas right now. The Golden Knights, our first actual major league franchise in the NHL. They're building a brand new ballpark for the Las Vegas 51s, our AAA franchise, which it looks like a possibility that hopefully the Dodgers will be returning as the parent team when that gets built a couple years down the road. The National Football League is coming. John Gruden maybe, and the Oakland Raiders becoming the Las Vegas Raiders. That would be exciting. it's a good time to be a Las Vegan. But listen, it's still one of the things that makes us unique. The state of Nevada, the ability to bet on sports legally. Hopefully that changes someplace, but in the meantime, we'll take our exclusive status, if you will, for the most part, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about the best bets we like for this weekend, Marco. These are among the games either we talked about here on the podcast or perhaps another game. I'll start off, and it's not on my card yet, but I think it probably has a good chance to be on my card. Won't be my big play. It'll probably be a 3% play at WagerTalk. But I do think the Falcons are going to give the Rams a really good battle for the reasons I outlined earlier. I'm not going to go through them again. You've listened to us long enough. So I'll go with the Falcons plus the points against the Raiders for my WagerTalk best bet. Marco, how about you? I think I have a feeling that glint in your eye indicates you might be talking about something we haven't talked about yet.
Yep, I'm gonna go to an NBA game for Friday night, so we'll kick the weekend off with hopefully a winner for you guys. And this is one of my favorite situations in the NBA. We've got Portland returning home from a road trip, and it was a road trip for them that they played 3 games in 4 nights, so not an easy road trip. And the middle game of that was an overtime game. Then they had to turn around from Chicago, go play the Cavaliers, another big game. Now you're returning home. I like to fade teams that first game back home, and this is a spot where they're going to look right past the team they're playing because they're playing the Atlanta Hawks, who have not been playing good basketball at all. They're going to be getting, right now, early number is 7, so I'm going to be looking at 7. I expect this line actually to go up a little bit tomorrow as people will want to buy in. They're not going to be wanting to buy Atlanta. Let's tell you that much. They're going to be looking to the Portland side. But the other factor is Portland's got a look-ahead game up next. You're coming off the road trip. You're playing Atlanta. You're going to look past them, and you've got San Antonio coming in after Atlanta. It's a great sandwich spot. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to take Atlanta plus the points here, and I think they can keep this one close.
You just mentioned something, by the way. This is why you take notes so that you don't forget. The Celtics and Cavaliers will be meeting again next month. After last night's game, both teams were already talking about the next meeting.
Yeah.
Circle the games they're playing right before that as potential look-ahead games for Boston and Cleveland, and I'll bet you don't do worse than 1-1, and you'll have a real good chance to win 2 games. And that's how taking notes and filing
situational
them.
handicapping.
Yes, absolutely. That's good stuff. That's going to do it for us. Scott Spreitzer will be back with us next week, I'm sure. And for Marco D'Angelo, Mark Seidel, who had his only contribution tonight was a sneeze, interestingly enough. It was a good one, though. Quality sneeze. And that's it. I'm Dave Cokin. We thank you for listening. Have a great weekend. And please check us out at WagerTalk.com.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.